Hey everybody, welcome to Obscurities and Miniatures. It is Friday, which means we get to bring to you yet another obscurity in literature. And I hate to say this one, well, it has some very redeeming qualities, but it didn't turn out as fantastic as I was hoping. This is the 25th anniversary Phantasy Star Visual Chronicle. And obviously, when I saw the cover and when I saw the list of every single game in the series, I was like, oh crap, finally, Sega has gone and done what I have wanted for ages, which is get the Sega equivalent of the Ultimania archives. This book, I don't even know if I've shown this, but I'm going to show it anyway. If you haven't seen it, it is an absolute treat if you grew up with the Final Fantasy games, especially the early ones, because this is one of the very few places that you can actually have all of the line art included for the various creatures that have shown up in the series, especially the very first one, which, you know, I have very fond memories of, but there is a ton of work that goes into all this stuff. And again, you've got all those monster illustrations there by Amano and friends. It really, you know, you've got the pixel layouts of how everything got programmed. You've got the line art again for the various heroes, the villains, the bosses, famous parts of the story. We've got like the remakes when they made them on the 3DS and the PSP and the WonderSwan stuff. It's all in here. There's just a ton of cool stuff to be had. And I thought finally, even like the line art for the actual sprites and how they were going to look for like the 5 characters and all their various job changes and a close-up of Edgar's portrait here. Good old Strago tomorrow. Various background. Anyway, so I thought we're going to be in for a treat with this. So way back when we got the very first Phantasy Star game, I never owned a Sega Master System, but a friend of my dad's who was an ex-client, acquaintance of his that we'd go visit every now and then as kids, his son, who was roughly about my age, had the most impressive Sega collection that I'd ever seen and have seen still at this point in my life. And I've known some pretty hardcore video game collectors in my day and age. But this kid at like age 11 or something had just this vast collection of really, you know, pretty impressive niche games even back then, but he knew his stuff, and that always impressed me even more. I mean, he knew Phantasy Star, he knew Dragon Quest, he knew what he was getting into, and I was like, dang, this kid knows his stuff. Anyway, long story short, I got a chance to play all those games, and through my stories and retellings to friends at school, I had one friend who actually ended up buying a Master System and a Genesis, and so I lived very voraciously through him as he played through the original Phantasy Star games. And so they have a really soft spot for me. I never owned them until way later. Much like the original Final Fantasy stuff. I own the original. I never owned 4, 5, and 6 when they first showed up on the Super Nintendo, Famicom, what system you want to call it. And same situation. I can vividly recall riding my bike through the rain because my friend was about to beat Final Fantasy IV. And that was a big deal. So this is it. This is all we get in this book for the original game. And for what a major step forward it was, being one of the very first RPGs on the Sega of any system, and for, you know, having a female protagonist for the anime style graphics. It was just really groundbreaking, really impressive at the time, and that's it, because the next pages we're already into Phantasy Star 2. Phantasy Star 2, I mean, oh my god, the artwork. I cannot remember the artist's name, but I absolutely love this guy's stuff. And unfortunately, the only thing I can ever find that he published, and I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he's got a really distinct style, did a lot of artwork for Dragon magazine in Japan, not the same TSR publication in the US, but Dragon magazine had a lot of fantasy RPG stuff published in. I want to say that's where Lodos War first came from originally, if we're going to really go back that far. And so a lot of his stuff was in this, and I think he's had one book published in like the late 90s. And one of these days I'm going to crack it down. But again, a very distinct style, very kind of French, Franco-Belgian, bande dessin, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't look like the typical anime style, like the character portraits down here for Ney and all of those classic folks. I remember in 6th grade, we went on a school trip, and it was like one of those first times as a kid spending money of my own that I was, free to do with for the day. And there was some video game magazine, I don't even know what it was now, but it had like a huge expose on Sega Genesis games, and it had a complete walkthrough on Phantasy Star 2. And I just remember staring at that and just daydreaming about it because I didn't have a Sega Genesis and I really wanted one, and it just kind of blew my mind the way that the author of the article and walkthrough just really kind of told the story, and it really, really had a big impact on me. And had a big thing on Alex Kidd, I remember, as well. But again, it's kind of sad that for as important and as big of landmark as these games are, like 3 with its whole lineage system, we get a couple extra pages about that, and even a few shots of the various items that would be in the instruction manuals, something that I've always loved about these types of games. So we jump to 4, into the millennium. I really love those cutscenes. I did finally get to play 4, probably in college, when I had time to play video games. But again, it's just kind of sad. Where's all the enemy designs? Where are all the character sketches? At least we've got like the main cast. And I always like 4 for the fact that it had like the cyborgs and aliens and all that stuff front and center. And again, I wish I could remember the artist's name, and it doesn't say anything about it, unfortunately. But like the battle screens, especially in 4 when you had like the animated monsters and stuff, it just, nothing else looked like that. Like, at least, you got to see your characters on the screen, whereas I always hated the fact that Dragon Quest, they disappeared once, battle started, at least until the later games. Final Fantasy, you could always see your characters, and I think that was always one of the draws for me, was just the bright, colorful sprites, and the fact that you got to see all the equipment that your characters were having. And here again, really a bit of a missed opportunity, because I don't even know anybody who actually owned the Game Gear games. I forgot they completely existed, or like the Telnet stuff. That's it. That's all there is. There's some interviews talking about it, and I guess I could probably convince somebody in my family to talk about it, and we get a little bit of the Algol star system and its history, which is kind of cool. And then we get to where things took that big, drastic shift. When Phantasy Star Online came out, we've got all the original classes, and I don't know about you guys, but this was like my era. I was in college, my roommate had a Dreamcast. I'm taking a big old swig of coffee because I keep on talking, and we spent countless hundreds of hours between the two of us with that game playing, and the Pioneer 2 music is always going to be burned into my head. Good times were had, especially with that modem. Jeez, even all the signs and stuff. I always ended up with Whittle, guys. Whittle and Redria, I remember. Episode 1 and 2, isn't this like around the GameCube era versions? And then we get into the card game. I didn't really play much of the card game. I owned it at one point. Blue Burst. Familiar with it. And then, look, for as important as online was, we get one page of concepts. Nothing in the way of weapons, nothing in the way of mags, and those were a big part of the game if you were around playing it back then. Then we jump to Universe, we have some of the characters, and we get into the portable versions, and again, at least we finally start to see some of the actual designs. Now, we're only about 40 pages in, but then we have to waste time with, I take that back, wasting time with stuff. Some of the more interesting designs from the portable universes. Portable Infinity, I vaguely remember playing. And I don't know if this one came out in English. I know I was playing some of them in Japanese. but I was actively trying to practice, so that made things a little bit easier. Again, it's kind of sad that we have some great designs, and they are just these tiny little pictures, and then like a bunch of just random illustrations by various people, which is nice, but I want more of this stuff, you know? At least we get some of this. That's what I'm here for. And even a little bit on Phantasy Star Zero, the 3DS game, but again, not much. A couple pages worth, a little bit of background, a little bit of talk about Sega ages, which, again, Sega being Sega, never bothered to bring to the US or outside of Japan. And then finally, the remainder of the book is prepping you for Phantasy Star Online 2. Not that there's anything wrong with Phantasy Star Online 2. It's got some really cool designs, there's lots of interesting costumes, cool enemy designs. Again, we get a lot of background material for it. But as neat as all this stuff is, there's cooler resources out there if you're interested in PSO2. Let me show them to you. Oh yeah, and you get a cool little system mag. So you can settle for this book, which has, you know, about 75, 80 pages worth of Phantasy Star Online material, or you can just get one of these massive tomes. Yeah, this is a big book, clocking in at almost 400 pages, and this is just Phantasy Star Online 2 design works. It's all just various material. This is episode 1 and 2. I believe we are on episode 6 right now, so there's at least 5 other books. At least 4, I should say. I know I have like 3. I don't think I have them all. But again, same stuff. Some of it's repeats, but there's going to be a whole lot more. Weapon designs. Oh, was that Nagano art? That is absolutely Mamoru Nagano. Mamoru Nagano, whose name I can't get out of my mouth right now. And it's right there on the page, even Mamoru Nagano, who is the creator of 5 Star Stories, who did a bunch of design work for the Zeta Gundam stuff, Heavy Metal L game. He's been around the block, was a fashion designer for quite some time. I have some of his books as well, if you guys are really curious. Actually, some of those are really cool. I don't own any 5 Star Stories stuff, surprisingly. I know Sparkle Trout did. But again, just a massive book filled with nothing, and that was a shark there. Shark launcher. All the weapon designs, of which there are an absolute ton. So if you're looking for kind of design inspiration, any of you 3D sculptors or artists, there's some neat stuff to kind of get the creative juices and ideas flowing for sure. Some of those cast designs are quite cool. We do start to get into the mags and enemies in the back, and that's something that I always love to see. You can never have enough enemy designs in these books. In fact, I've got like one of the Legends of Heroes ones from Falcom, and there's like 2 pages of enemies. Really? There's only 2 pages worth of enemies in the entire game? Come on, look at this. There's just page after page after page of just interesting designs. Most of this stuff being actual in-game, but a lot of them also are early concepts before things really got kind of worked out. And the fact that I also appreciate is it's just artwork. There's no renders. None of this is actual render work. It's just boss designs, monster designs, character designs, you know, with the designer notes all over it even. And the thing is, like I said, there's at least another 4 books for sure. Probably 5 if I'm remembering correctly. We're getting into mag territory, getting into the burst creatures. There's just a lot to do. Background material, locations, all the story stuff. I mean, so this is something worth looking into, I think, if you're really interested in Phantasy Star art design. But again, I really wish for a book like this we had more of the earlier ones. I feel like that's such a missed opportunity. You know, Phantasy Star, even online, got a lot of its recognition because of that name value, because of fans associating such high quality with those original games. They made such a big impression on a lot of us growing up that if it wasn't for that, you know, I don't think that they would have even used the name Phantasy Star necessarily on the online games, and those are a big game changer as well. And for somebody like me who grew up playing them, it is nice to see this stuff represented. I don't know where I put all of my actual PSO art books, but even those weren't anywhere as comparable as this. This thing is just, I love these books. Like I said, I've got like 3 of them, just full of cool designs. If I could actually sculpt something, I would absolutely wholeheartedly and blatantly use those as inspirations to make miniatures and figures for people who are interested. But thankfully, there's much more talented people out there doing that already. But sadly, not much in the way of Phantasy Star yet. So hopefully we'll see some stuff. And hopefully, if you guys know of any leads that actually have something similar to the Final Fantasy books in terms of really having that content, especially in terms of the artwork of the old ones, by all means, give me the title, point me in the right direction, let me know, and we will give proper accreditation to whoever can help in that regard. So I look forward to hearing from you guys in that, and hopefully, I'll have something to report back in the near future, but at least for the time being, there's plenty to enjoy. And heck, PSO is free anyway, so if you've got a decent enough computer, and I think it's available on some of the current systems, go enjoy it, relive those glory days, go grind for some cool looking gear, right? So with that said then, this has been High Lord Tamberlane with Obscurities and Miniatures saying thanks for watching, and we will see you back here soon. Bye-bye!